Hello, Nachi.
Hey, hi Mohit.
So, today we decided to shoot a video on AKS, which is Azure Kubernetes Service. Yeah, so Nachi, would you like to describe this in few words?
Yes, Mohit, surely. So in the last attempt, what we tried was we tried to deploy a container inside Azure Container Service, and in the real world, we probably are not going to have one container. We're going to have multiple containers, and we need to orchestrate it. So Kubernetes is a tool which can manage a couple of containers, and
Hmm.
Azure Kubernetes Service is the Azure's offering of Kubernetes. So if you have to have Kubernetes, there is a lot of infrastructure work that needs to be done. Azure does that all for us, and it calls it Kubernetes Service. That's
Oh,
AKS.
okay. Okay. So, so AKS is basically taking care of all the background work and all the management activities, and the developer can focus on just deploying the nodes, right?
Absolutely. So all the infrastructure is taken care by Azure for us.
Okay, that's cool. So, Raji, would you like to show how do we create one?
Sure. So this is my Azure portal, and I'm going to be creating a Kubernetes service.
Hmm.
So let me search for the Kubernetes service. Okay, got it. And so, okay, so we need to fill in a couple of information, and Azure will create one for us. So the first thing is, what is a subscription? Like any Azure thing, what we create, we need to specify the subscription where the billing is going to come. And all the Azure resources are going to be sitting inside a resource group. So we need a resource group which can hold it. And for now, I'm going to create a new resource group. So I'm going to call this K8 as RG,
Hmm.
and the cluster name. So I'm going to call this K8S, learning K8S. And it's asking me for a region. For now, I'm going to just choose a US region. I'm just a little more comfortable, and I think all the so the version of Kubernetes, everything could differ based on the region. For now, let's just choose US East. And it also asks me what is the availability zone. So there are three availability zones here. I'm going to choose all three of them.
Hmm.
And the node size. So like, what is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is nothing but a bunch of machines connected together. And the moment we ask an application to run, there is an API server inside Kubernetes which decides where it runs, and it just runs the thing there. So there are
Hmm.
going to be multiple machines. And what is this node size is, what is the size of each node? The SKU that's used for each node, that's what is specified here.
Hmm.
And the next parameter says how many nodes we want to make the Kubernetes cluster to be. So currently it's 3, and I'm going to leave it with the defaults.
Okay. So, Nachi, you have chosen the name as K8S. Would you like to know why did you
Okay, so
K8?
Kubernetes, it starts with K and it ends with S, and there are probably 8 characters in the middle, or totally there are 8 characters, and that's general short form used for Kubernetes, and that's the reason I chose that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So the basic things are filled, and here we have something called as a node pool. So here we can add node pools and stuff like that. So there is something called as a virtual node, and
Hmm.
there is authentication which can be modified here, and networking integration. So basically, there are a couple of other options that I can change, but for
Hmm.
now, I'm not going to do it. And let's just create this with the basic configuration. So it's going to do some validations, and after that, we can create it.
Okay. So it
Okay, so
just looks like click of few buttons and we probably would have the AKS cluster ready
I
in a
mean,
while.
not yet. So the validations are run. So now we are going to create it. So I'm initiating the creation. This could take a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So currently it's going to create uh, the cluster then.
Yes, that's right. We had initiated the creation of the deployment, and it's already created. Let's go to the resources. So
Mm-hmm.
now we have already created a Kubernetes service in Azure.
Mm-hmm.
That's how quick it is or how simple it is.
Yeah, exactly, Nachi. I think this was just few clicks of button, and within few minutes we have the AKS service ready.
Yes, that's right. And maybe it would be good if we try to deploy an application inside and see how simple is that. So currently we have a Kubernetes service, but there are no business applications that are running inside. So now
Mm-hmm.
what we could do is we could connect to this Kubernetes cluster and deploy an application of our interest inside it and access it. So here in the Kubernetes service, there is an option called as connect. So what
Mm-hmm.
this gives is, it gives us a method for our local desktop to connect to the Kubernetes service.
Mm-hmm.
And so these two commands, if I run, it should be able to do that. And before I do that, I need to log in into my Azure in my command prompt with Azure in the AZCLI.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do a login. So AZ login will help me log in into the CLI. So the login is successful. Now I have
Mm-hmm.
my uh, command prompt with Azure logged into Azure.
Mm-hmm.
And now let me run this command. So what is the need for this command is if I have multiple subscriptions, under which subscription I should operate, this command sets it for me. So I
Okay.
actually have one, so it's okay if I don't run that as well. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the command which helps the kubectl to connect to the cluster. It needs
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of information to which cluster to connect and the authentication information. So when
Mm-hmm.
I run this, it's going to download a config and merge it with my kubectl config.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have I've created a I've downloaded my config.
Okay.
Now let's run kubectl, get nodes. So this should show us all the nodes. So we created this cluster
Mm-hmm.
with 3 nodes and all
Mm-hmm.
these 3 nodes are visible here. We
Okay.
still do not
So
have any
Nachi,
yes, Mohit.
this is really, I mean, the Azure, the connect option which Azure has provided is really, powerful, and in the sense, uh, from the user point of view, if I see, I do not have to do much. I just need to connect to the portal and then use these commands, and I'm there already in the CLI
Exactly.
working
So
on it.
Azure makes it really, really easy. So if you have to scramble and get all these commands together, it's going to take us time. So
Hmm.
Azure just gives it readily available to you.
Yeah, that's really, really nice.
Cool. So now, so if you have to deploy something inside a Kubernetes cluster, there are things that are, we have to write what has to be deployed in terms of a YAML file. And
Hmm.
for now, I've got a application which is, I've got a YAML file which can deploy an application for us. So
Hmm.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this YAML file such that whatever application it's asking me, it's mentioned in the YAML file, it's going to be deployed.
Hmm.
And so there are a couple of resources that it is creating and it should be
Hmm.
available.
Hmm.
So one of the resources what we're creating is called as a Kubernetes service. So now we can see the status of this service. Cool. So this particular service is the front end, and it's a type of service called as a load balancer, and it also
Hmm.
has an external IP. So when
Okay.
we use this IP, we should be able to reach to this application what we deployed.
Okay. So Nachi, this service that you have created is, if I may ask you in a layman's language, or whatever, like I have understood, it probably is creating a network which will help us to connect, right?
Uh, so the network between the VMs, if you're asking, that's already been created as part of the Azure creation. So what exactly is the service doing is there are going to be pods which actually run the application. And service is nothing but a DNS lookup for the application. And this kind of a service, which is a load balancer, creates an external IP. And
Mm-hmm.
once I make a connection request to that, it load balances to the pods which are already there.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So basically I need to hit this IP now.
Hmm.
Cool. So the application what we deployed is already available to us. And that's so what we've done is we've created a Kubernetes cluster and we've also deployed an application into it. And that's how simple it is.
Wow, I think this is really nice. Cool. And Nachi, while you were creating the cluster, there were a couple of things that I saw, or I was curious to know because I was before starting this discussion, I had a short look. So there was something mentioned about system node pools and user node pools. Would you like to describe something about these things?
Yeah, sure. So let's just take another look into it and let's maybe get into the details.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just attempting to create another cluster. So let's just create some,
Mm-hmm.
pass in some information. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you're asking about this, right? So what are the options it
Mm-hmm.
gives you?
Exactly, Nachi.
So what is a node pool? Like we discussed now, Kubernetes cluster is made up of a couple of virtual machines. And
Mm-hmm.
what a node pool is it's a similar type of machines grouped together. So why there is a concept of node pool? So in case I want two different kinds of machines, one really powerful machine and one little bit medium powered machines, then I can have two node pools and each node pool will have a couple of nodes. So my
Mm-hmm.
Kubernetes cluster is nothing but a bunch of node pool machines from a bunch of node pools. So we had actually created only one node pool last time. So
Mm-hmm.
now we can also create an additional node pool. And when we create an additional node pool, it tells us, it gives us a couple of modes. One is a user mode and one is a system mode. So
Mm-hmm.
in the user mode, when we create a node pool, any application that we create can also run in that machines. And when we
Mm-hmm.
create a system node pool, only the Kubernetes applications run in that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
similarly, we have the option of choosing the operating system, Windows and Linux.
Okay. So Nachi, the one which we created, as if you go back, it says system. So that's a system, right?
In a system node pool, the system nodes will run, and we could also be running the application nodes.
Oh,
So when we create a user node, it doesn't run the system nodes at all.
okay. Okay.
System applications, I mean, sorry.
Okay. So Nachi, I also see there's uh, something known as virtual nodes. What are they?
What you're seeing here, the virtual nodes. So Azure
Mm-hmm.
Kubernetes cluster also gives us a mechanism to run applications in a serverless mode. So in a serverless mode, when an application needs to be run, the resources provisioned, it runs the application and it gives releases the resources back. So when we
Mm-hmm.
enable this, what
Mm-hmm.
happens is we can have workloads that have an affinity towards running in this. And when a request comes for that, it provisions the serverless component and it runs the application, and post running the application, it releases that. So this provides a very good mechanism to scale.
Okay. Okay. So that's also a really useful option which Azure gives us.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
nice. That's right. I think with this discussion that we had, I know, much more about AKS. So really nice to have this discussion, Nachi. And thanks a lot. And I'm looking forward for some wonderful discussion coming, going forward. So thanks
Uh,
a lot.
nice talking to you, Mohit. Thank you.